Movies exploring the open American frontier often pit the settler community against the original landowners, the Native Americans who are often portrayed as a threat.
What about Indians?
Through the years, this representation has transformed, but not for the better. More recent Tinseltown motion pictures feature the natives as a backward culture in need of enlightenment. For a brief period during the counterculture movement of the 1970s, American filmmakers did try to explore the atrocities committed by the settlers, but it was short-lived.
Forgive me, ma'am, but very few unaccompanied ladies travel beyond no more.
Then they are missing some rare beauty.
You're not a soldier's wife.
No, I'm a painter.
Now a new film featuring Golden Globe winner Jessica Chastain once again aims to take an introspective step. Woman Walks Ahead finds the veteran actor playing an artist who wants to paint the portrait of a Sioux chief.
From the east.
Media outlets have praised the flick for the strong performances of its actors. And while some have critiqued the film's white savior theme, others have argued that it speaks on behalf of the settlers who were against the injustices committed against Native Americans.
Then I will be still.
What would be the point of shooting you?
They tracked down every chief, killed them all.
Except for you. The only battle I ever fought against is insignificance.
Children are being taken away from their parents right now. And I can't talk about that without crying. I get so emotional about that. But I mean, that happened in your family, you know? So it's not a new thing that's happened in the United States. It's really woven into the fabric of what this nation was built on.
Yeah. Our communities were gutted when children were taken. And I'm from Canada, and that same history played out. So when I look at the headlines, I see an all too familiar history playing out before us.
He looked so magnificent.
These women do not give him reason to hope.
And the talent featured in Woman Walks Ahead believes the subject matter of their movie is still relevant today in the wake of the US's controversial refugee regulations. Woman Walks Ahead wrapped up production in 2017, and critics say it's no coincidence that the movie got a wide release at a time when racial political tension in the US was, and perhaps still is, on the rise.
Deep down, that's what the bull wants too.
Now, terrible things have happened here in the past. I'm just here to paint a painting.
Later in the show, we'll take a look at Yellowstone, a new TV series that touches on subject matter similar to Woman Walks Ahead. But first, let's speak with Mary Stuckey. She's a professor of communication arts and sciences who specializes in American Indian politics. Thank you so much for coming on our show today, Mary. Now, let's begin by first talking about the difference between how Indigenous men are represented compared to how Indigenous women are represented on screen.
So men tend to come in one of two flavors. They tend to be portrayed either as savages or as noble. When they are savages, they tend to be victimizers. When they are noble, they tend to be victims. Women, on the other hand, are almost always portrayed as pure Indian maidens, and they are often exploited by white people.
So what are some examples of productions you think did a particular disservice to Native Americans?
Well, anything before the 1980s or 1990s. The most notorious films are things like John Wayne movies in general, particularly The Searchers. There's a film called, I think, Cheyenne Autumn that is famous in Indian country for its negative depictions of Indians and is often made fun of. Later, sort of after the Red Power movement, movies got a little bit better. So you get things like Little Big Man, you get Kevin Costner's depiction of Indians in Dances with Wolves, which is one of the few and earliest movies in which American Indians actually portrayed American Indians as opposed to white people dressing up like Indians.
And Pocahontas was also a production that caused a bit of controversy as well, wasn't it?
Indeed it was. Russell Means, who was a very famous Indian activist, also argued that that was one of the best portrayals of American Indians ever made. A lot of American Indians disagreed with that characterization.
Mm-hmm. Now, in what ways do these often negative fictional representations affect people's real lives?
So it's a question of accumulated weight, I think, is the best way to think about this. So what happens is if you get one negative stereotype, it doesn't matter very much. But when all of the depictions of you or your group are negative or wrong, then the weight of that starts to bear on you quite a lot. I know Indian children, for instance, who have been made fun of because they have long hair. People treat them as if they're dirty, as if they're savages. And these are children. They don't need that, but they also never get over it.
Is there a financial impact as well?
Sure, because if you think of a group as stupid or as ignorant or as untrainable, it's less likely to employ them. Certainly, life on an Indian reservation is difficult at best.
All right. Now, there's also this misconception of thinking that all Native Americans are alike, and there is no variation in their cultures and history, isn't there?
There is that misconception, as if all American Indians live in teepees. There are 500 plus different Indian nations in the United States alone. And there are a variety of cultures, of languages, of connections to other indigenous people. Yes, there's a great deal of variety among Indian people, and many of them also live on reservations. Many of them live in cities. Many of them drive pickup trucks. They drive Porsches. They are not all the same person.
Tell me why Dances with the Wolves was such a successful and popular production.
So successful and popular doesn't necessarily mean that it was also good. In general, when members of a hegemonic or settler culture make movies about the indigenous people that were there before them, the perspective you're going to get is that of the indigenous or of the settler nation, not of the indigenous people. So one of the nice things about Dances with Wolves is that it actually treated American Indians as if they had viable cultures and histories and traditions that were worth respecting and even emulating. But fundamentally, that movie remains about the white guy, not about the Indian people.
So are there any good representations of Native Americans in pop culture that you can cite?
Oh, sure. And in general, if you want to see good movies about indigenous people, you should look at the movies, read the novels, see the art that's produced by those people. So for movies, for instance, you've got Geronimo, An American Legend, Smoke Signals, The Fast Runner, which is about the Aleut, a movie called Skins. There's one called Imprint. There's one called Dance Me Outside. That's quite good. And so I think that in general, if you look to the movies produced by the people concerned, you're going to get better, more rich and more accurate depictions of them than if you look at movies produced by people from outside that culture.
Well, Mary, why do you think it's so crucial and important to have productions like the one you just listed made?
Because we live in a world in which we have vast misconceptions about other people, other groups, other cultures, and the more accurate our information and the greater our understanding of those cultures.
Well, Mary, thank you so much for giving us that insight and coming on our show today.
Thank you very much for having me.